Mr. President?
Larry, if you I just realized you're doing that here.
Yeah.
Does not seem
Call the January 18th meeting of the APC to order. Mr. Burns, would you call the roll?
Jackson Bogan.
Here.
Larry Leverance.
Here.
Carlos Snodgrass. Gary Schrader.
Here.
Jerry Reynolds.
Present.
Greg Jones. Bob Metzger. Diana Looper. Vicki Pearl. Michelle Dennis. Tom Murtaugh.
Present.
Perry Brown. Tracy Brown.
Here.
Jason Dumkowski. Lisa Dullum.
Here.
Kathy Parker.
Here.
Jody Hamilton.
Here.
Quorum present.
Thank you, sir. Would you begin with an election, please?
I will. I would like to open the nominations for president of the APC.
I move to nominate Larry Leverance for president.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a motion to close the nominations?
I move that nominations for president be closed.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of closing a nomination for president signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those against, same sign. Unanimous vote.
I move to cast a unanimous ballot for Larry Leverance for president.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to cast a unanimous ballot for Larry Leverance for president. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Unanimous pass. Mr. President, the meeting is yours.
Thank you. Nominations for vice president.
I move that Gary Schrader be nominated for vice president.
Second.
I move that nominations for vice president be closed.
Second.
All those in favor of closing nominations signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I move to cast a unanimous ballot for Gary Schrader for vice president.
All those in favor of unanimous ballot for Gary signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Executive Committee representatives.
I move that Gary Schrader and Tom Murtaugh be nominated to represent Tippecanoe County. I move that Jerry Reynolds and Jackson Bogan be nominated to represent the City of Lafayette. I move that Larry Leverance and Kathy Parker be nominated to represent the City of West Lafayette. I move that Greg Jones be nominated to represent the towns of Dayton, Battle Ground, and Clarks Hill. I move that nominations for the Executive Committee be closed.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I move to cast a unanimous ballot for Gary Schrader, Tom Murtaugh, Jerry Reynolds, Jackson Bogan, Larry Leverance, Kathy Parker, and Greg Jones for Executive Committee.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Area Board of Zoning Appeals representatives.
I move that Gary Schrader and Michelle Dennis be nominated to represent the Area Plan Commission on the Area Board of Zoning Appeals. I move that nominations for the Area Board of Zoning Appeals be closed.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I move to cast a unanimous ballot for Gary Schrader and Michelle Dennis for the Area Board of Zoning Appeals.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All I can say is you better not be sleeping on that. Briefing session.
Thank you. We nominate E-2872, Friends of the Education Building, Inc. Are what we are Area Plan Commission public hearing with filing deficiencies. The other cases are scheduled for
Thank you. Approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the December 21st, 2022 public hearing as submitted.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. New business.
I move to hear and vote on Resolution 2023-01.
I second.
Good evening, David Hiddle with the Area Plan Commission. You have before you a set of proposed changes to the Area Plan Commission bylaws. These were brought to the Ordinance Committee, or the Bylaws Committee, which is awfully similar to the Ordinance Committee last month, and now they're making an appearance before the full commission tonight. They mirror, as much as possible, changes that are being brought before the Board of Zoning Appeals to their bylaws. There are some differences, but everything that can be the same, we're trying to do our best to keep the same from one to the other. There's a brief staff report on page 7, and then the red line changes are included after that, beginning on page 8, and I'll just summarize them for you here. Probably the biggest one is that the bylaws would be changed to require a notification period of 21 days rather than 10 days prior to the hearing, so that if you want to rezone a property or do something else that would come before this board, you have to send the letter out to the neighbors and put the sign on your property 21 days at least prior to the hearing rather than 10. 10 is the state minimum, and there are only a few jurisdictions really that still adhere to that state minimum. Most have expanded to 14, 21, 23, and in some cases even 28 days. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but chiefly it allows for a more full staff review. It allows for more time for neighbors to understand what's going on, to call and talk to staff, and in many cases to meet with the petitioners. You get a more educated and efficient hearing, I think, with that extra notification requirement. It also expands the range of notification from a minimum, and these are the letters that are mailed to neighbors. Currently, you only have to mail to those adjoining the subject parcel. With this change, you would have to mail to all neighbors adjoining and within another parcel, so 2 parcels deep or 200 feet, whichever is greater. And that's still quite a bit below what is normal for most jurisdictions. A lot of places, there'll be a 600-foot surrounding area, which in my experience is onerous, but that's more common than ours. It's still relatively meager, but it's double our current requirement. This would also these changes would also provide for different handling of submitted letters of opposition and support. So rather than staff reading them into the record, if they are received a week before the hearing, they will be included in the published packet so that you can digest them well in advance of the hearing. If they're not received a week before, if they're received 6 to 1 days before, we'll include them in the file and still make those later arriving letters available for your review if you'd like. And we took out all the language dictating the font size and things like that, because that's just never really been a problem. And then finally, the changes would allow for administrative approvals of certain administrative tasks. Some of you know that the Executive Committee somewhat frequently meets not to hear anything, but to sort of have a 5-minute rubber stamping session of things that are listed here: approval of APC and BZA agendas, determination that variances are variances of development standards and not variances of use, determination that special exception requests meet the comp plan, and then approval of monthly budget reports. So we occasionally will have a 4-minute executive committee meeting that doesn't really require everybody to make the trip here. In this instance, it can allow the president of the executive committee to administratively approve those matters with written notice to the rest of the executive committee, saving everybody time. That paragraph, which is really the only new addition, is on page 21. Everything else is just changed numbers and changed stuff, but this is a new addition of a new paragraph. And Steve Clevenger just pointed out a good thing right before the hearing, that we want to add some language. So that on page 21, in the middle, under number 2, where it says, "Make determinations that variance requests pending hearing by the Lafayette Board of Zoning Appeals do not constitute use variances." We want to add the language, "Make determinations that variance requests pending hearing by the ABZA and the Lafayette Board of Zoning Appeals," because that applies not just to Lafayette, but to our BZA as well. So it's just language I had not put in. I think that's all. The BZA is slated to look at their bylaw amendments later this month. And again, to the extent that they can, they're going to mirror what you see before you here tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
One question I have. Does Steve's comment, would that also apply to number 3? Did I misread that? Area Board of Zoning Appeals. Would that want to also include Lafayette Board of Zoning Appeals?
No. This is one of the quirks in our system. For whatever reason, Steve, tell me if I'm correct here. Here you are. Special exceptions,
Are only heard by the ABZA.
yeah, they don't go to Lafayette.
They don't go to Lafayette.
Okay. So, yeah,
Correct.
that wouldn't
Thank you.
apply to number 3.
Yes.
Do you need a motion to include that?
I think you should, to move to amend the written and handed out document.
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions regarding that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Any questions on this bylaw change from the audience? Any other questions from the board? You have a yellow ballot for this one.
Thank you. Thank you.
16 ballots cast, all in favor of the resolution.
Thank you.
I move to hear and vote on the primary approval extension for Elliott Industrial Park Subdivision S 2351.
Good evening. This is the 12th primary approval extension request. The 11th actually ran out yesterday, so those are 2-year extensions. This is on the corner of Concord and Brady. It includes some area that can still be platted. It's just it takes a while to develop some of these, and this will allow them to continue to plat lots in the future.
Okay. Does the petitioner or his representative wish to make a presentation?
Good evening, Tim Ballancy with T-Bird Design here for the petitioner. Agree with all staff's comments. I will add that I've talked with the owner, and this will probably be the last one you'll see. We'll final plat the rest of that. I think I've got him talked into that, so hopefully this will be the last one you'll see for this one.
Does any member of the audience wish to comment on this petition? Questions from the board? Hearing none, you have a yellow ballot.
Sorry, Larry, here we go.
Sixteen zero, yes.
Thank you. Let me read our procedures for the public hearing portion of the meeting. For those of you unfamiliar with our procedures, the Commission would like you to know the following. When we hear a request to subdivide land, we're only concerned as to whether the actual drawing showing the division into lots meets the technical requirements of our ordinance. The question of appropriateness has already been determined. Anyone wishing to make comments or provide us with information regarding any subdivision petitions will be given the opportunity to do so. When we are hearing a request for a change in zoning, we're trying to determine if the new zone being requested and the uses allowed in that zone are appropriate to that property and supported by the comprehensive plan. With each case being heard, our staff will present its report. Then the person requesting the rezone will be given an opportunity to speak. Following that, those of you wishing to speak in favor of the rezone will be recognized, and then those who wish to oppose it will have a turn. This will be your only time to speak. The person requesting the action will be allowed a rebuttal. Plan Commission members will then ask questions and finally vote. Please limit your statements to no more than 5 minutes. We ask that you not repeat what others before you have already said. We are a 17-member body, and a majority of 17 is 9. Regardless of how many commissioners are actually present, at least 9 votes in favor or 9 votes against are required for our action to be official. If fewer than 9 of us agree to either approve or disapprove an action, that case must be heard again next month. Our vote on a request to subdivide is final. Our vote on a request to rezone serves as a recommendation to the appropriate city council, town council, or county commissioners, who must ultimately decide on changes in zoning. When addressing the commission, please state your name and address for the record. Cell phones must be turned off while the meeting is in session. If you need to make a call, please step out of the room before using your phone. All exhibits presented to the commission become the property of the commission.
I move that there be incorporated into the public hearing portion of each application to be heard this evening and to become part of the evidence at such hearing, the Unified Zoning Ordinance, the Unified Subdivision Ordinance, the Comprehensive Plan, the bylaws of the Area Plan Commission, the application and all documents filed therewith, the staff report and recommendations on the applications to be heard this evening, and responses from the checkpoint agencies.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. I'm ready to hear the continuance.
I move to continue Z 2872, the Friends of the Education Building Incorporated, R1 to R1U to R3U, to the February 15th, 2023 APC public hearing due to filing deficiency.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Ordinance amendments.
I move to hear and vote on UZO Amendment Number 109.
Thank you. You have before you a proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance. This also was brought last month to the ordinance committee, and this has to do with agricultural rental halls. In fact, it would add a new section to Chapter 4 of the zoning ordinance titled Agricultural Rental Halls. They are currently permitted by grant of special exception by the Board of Zoning Appeals in the agricultural districts. But there's no specific language that goes along with that. It's just a review of special exception findings and then a determination as to whether or not they meet them. But this would add 4 or 5 specific dimensional requirements that agricultural rental halls would need to meet or get variances from, and I'll go through those in order here. So this is all on page 29 of your packet. The first requirement is that the primary use building of an agricultural rental hall shall be set back from the nearest dwelling no less than 1,000 feet. So whatever building is going to be built or used as the agricultural rental hall can be no closer than 1,000 feet to any neighboring dwelling. The second one is that there may be no outdoor amplified music. The third deals with hours of operation and places them maximally at 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 8 a.m. through midnight Friday and Saturday. And the fourth one maxes out the guest capacity at 300 persons in the main hall. That's unless the state design shows that because of the size of the building and by fire code, the maximum needs to be less than that. And finally, number E, letter E, says that there shall be a buffer yard required between the parking area and adjacent properties at the discretion of the administrative officer. There are some cases where legitimately it might be useful and some cases where it would have no impact at all. So we would leave it to the administrative officer to make that determination at the time that the permit is reviewed. And the reason for this is because there's kind of been a spate, if you will, of agricultural rental halls approved over the last several years, and they've proven to be a little bit more onerous, I think, than anybody expected. And I think that the source of the nuisance, more often than not, is noise. We've heard from neighbors of agricultural rental halls that are existing, and we've heard plenty of complaints from agricultural rental halls that were in place without having a special exception. And the most constant complaint about them has to do with the noise, which is why we added this separation requirement and the prohibition on outdoor amplified music. In the last couple of years, these things typically appeared, or variations of them appeared, as conditions that we requested the petitioner to add, but here they would actually be in the ordinance, and so you would have to meet these requirements unless you wanted to additionally request a variance from one of these. I think that's all that we have to say about that. We'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from the board?
I did get some feedback from a current rental hall, actually 2 different rental halls, and they had questions around the outdoor amplified music, and they had no concerns with it whatsoever except for the bridal procession, which they say is, less than 15 minutes and is always before 6 p.m. at night anyway.
Yeah.
But they do at times amplify that music. It's not loud, they state, but they were inquiring as to whether an exception could be made to that, whether it be a set, no later than 6 p.m. or a certain length of time.
We talked about that, and we decided not to specifically address that. I think our thought was that the spirit of the thing is intended towards the reception music, the loud stuff. You know, it's that cannot be outdoors. It can't be amplified outdoors. I think there's an expectation that you might have amplified music or, you know, a string quartet or something to do the actual ceremonial music. But we thought that probably just wouldn't spur the complaint to begin with. It would be if they're using outdoor amplified music for the boom boom reception music. We could add language. I think if you get that much into the minutia, you're not really doing yourself much help there. But if there's a desire, we could add something that exempts ceremonial processional music or something along those lines, because it's not the spirit, it's not the intent to say you can't play Here Comes the Bride, you know, at a quiet level.
Well, the current ones are grandfathered in, so it would only be on new ones, correct?
Yeah.
So they could write it in at that point as a,
But they would have to do they would have to do a variance for that, right?
Yeah, a very strict reading of this, they would. Again, the thought is that it would just never come up as a complaint if they're doing it, you know, thoughtfully.
yeah, but I can see the point that Tom's making, because based on what I know's gone on with another wedding barn, if neighbors are getting upset, it doesn't matter whether it's I can't say the word, music or not, they're going to be calling in complaining, so I totally understand.
That's a good point.
Yeah, then it gets into what song do you play before the wedding march and how long early does, I mean, you could really split hairs on it. David, I do have a question about the privacy fence. We've specified wood, and I suppose there's always a possibility there could be another substance, you know, could be PVC or some kind of a windscreen that blocks or deflects the light. So would we maybe be better just to say a 6-foot solid fence or describe something that actually blocks out light if that's what we're trying to achieve?
I think the administrative officer would have that discretion, but to your point, we could just take out the word wood.
Okay.
A 6-foot solid privacy fence.
Yeah, I think I would feel more comfortable if it had the ceremonial music exempted from that. So,
How about a suggestion at the end of B, after the word music, it would continue and say, other than brief ceremonial or processional music. Brief, you know, it helps.
okay.
And I think it would
that
certainly
works.
allow what everyone seems to be talking about here.
That
Other
sounds
than
good.
brief ceremonial or processional music, period.
That sounds good. We can add that.
Is that an amendment, sir?
Well, I'll make a motion for 2 changes. The one, as stated, that Eric's going to restate for the record.
We would add other than brief ceremonial or processional music at the end of section 2B after the word music to continue the sentence.
And also remove wood from under E1, remove the word wood.
Second.
Any discussion on those? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Anything else? Any comment from the audience on this?
Michelle has it.
Michelle's got it.
Oh, okay.
There's been, there's a lot of talk about the enforcement. Is this anything that we found in terms of creating the changing or clarifying the enforcement?
No, we handle enforcement now, and if there was a violation, we handle enforcement. There are some, this is not super easy to enforce.
you have to be there to see or hear that the music is, the reception music is being played outdoors. But we've dealt with that kind of thing before, so you can get neighbors who are able or willing to do videos, and that kind of thing is usable. So it folds into our enforcement processes just fine. Thanks for asking, though.
Any other comments, questions? All right, you have another yellow ballot then. And you're voting on an amended motion.
An amended amendment. You voted this time.
Thank you. Thanks. Sixteen ballots cast, all in favor.
Thank you. Rezones.
I move to hear and vote on Z 2870, Area Plan Commission rezone of Stockwell, R3, A, GB, NB, R1, and AA to R1, R1B, NBU, and GB.
There. Thank you. This is a multi-rezoning in the town of Stockwell, the unincorporated town of Stockwell, and this follows on the heels of the Stockwell town plan, which we completed in the last several months. One thing I'll note that we're not doing here is we are not doing any rezoning on the outskirts, kind of to prep the agricultural area for new residential development, because that was very clearly not something that the town desired. So if that were to happen, that rezoning, it would be at the request of developers in a public hearing in front of the Plan Commission sometime in the future. So for now, this is kind of a cleanup. It really actually is a cleanup of several different sites. They're the ones that are circled in yellow here, and I'll just kind of go over them piece by piece. There's three of them here, R3, R3, and R3, that all allow for apartment buildings. We don't know why they are ever zoned R3, because there are no apartment buildings on them. They just have single-family dwellings. The town expressed a very clear concern for the development of apartment buildings in here, so what we're proposing is to rezone from R3 to R1B, which is the rezoning or the zoning of the single-family dwellings in town. There's an A in here for agricultural, because at the time it was rezoned to A, that allowed by right for a mobile home, which was put in place. However, rezoning to R1B, like the other districts here, is again more in keeping, because it's certainly not an agriculturally used property. Here you see NB, the red, which is neighborhood business, and there's a little splotch of it right there. That would be rezoned from neighborhood business to neighborhood business U, which is urban. The difference is that neighborhood business U is more in line with the small town Main Street that you have here, and that you have in other small towns. You have older buildings that are built to the street with the front door opening onto the sidewalk, and smaller parking lots and things like that. Whereas the NB is more of a suburban designation for strip malls and commercial shopping centers and things along those lines. And there is a pretty clear preference stated amongst the townspeople for continuing the older business square feel, so that would be NB to NBU. This R1 polygon here would change to GB, and that would simply unify the zoning of the site. You can hardly see here, but there are silos and other buildings that this line cuts directly down the center of, which doesn't make much sense. So we would be bringing the GB to include the entire lot there on which those silos and other buildings are located. And then finally, this AA way down here would be rezoned to R1, which is in keeping with these other more rural, large lot zoning districts in the area. So these, again, are all kind of corrective to get the zoning in line with what's actually happening on the property. And again, to take away the threat in the townspeople's eyes of potential apartment buildings being brought into these R3 zones. Notice was provided to all of the property owners involving these sites, and then it was also placed in the town, in the downtown area at the post office and on the township trustees, in the township trustees office. We did receive a couple phone calls about this, but they are mostly from people who weren't aware of what was going on, and once told, they didn't express any concern about it. So I'm hoping that there's no consternation about this tonight, but we'd be glad to answer any questions if there are. I think that's all that we have to add here. After this rezoning is done, we're going to come back with another thing that the town requested, which are very, very simple architectural standards, which would require new homes to have front porches, to not have dominant garages, and to provide for a certain amount of architectural variety from one new home to the next, so that you don't have cookie cutter, carbon copy homes lining an entire street. But that'll be the next thing to come, probably in the next month or two, to the Plan Commission. Not part of this tonight. So be happy to answer any questions about the rezonings.
So, David, what we're doing tonight makes no property non-conforming?
Correct.
Okay, just want to confirm.
Anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? Any other questions from the board? Yellow ballot.
$16 ballots cast, all in favor.
Thank you.
I move to hear and vote on Z 2871, Zanuck Corporation, I3 to GB.
This request is for the I3 to GB on the south-northeast corner of Veterans Memorial Parkway and Concord Road. This was previously a small vet clinic. It's been gone. The building has been raised a few years ago. As you can see, the surrounding properties to the east and west have been zoned general business for quite some time. This is on the edge of the industrial rezone from 1984, 88. In that rezone, we had a large industrial corridor, which this is on the edge of. Staff sees this as a supporting site for that industrial corridor. The I-3 just normally doesn't fit with these smaller lots. Most of the heavy industrial need larger sized lots. This site would get its access off of Fairfield Court, We were told by the petitioner's representative that it would be rezoned for a urgent care facility, which there is not one currently along Veterans Memorial Parkway, so one's needed out in this area, and staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Does the petitioner or petitioner's representative wish to make a presentation?
Good evening. My name is John Schrader. I'm here on behalf of the Zanuck Corporation. I work at Ball Eggleson, been working on this with Joe Bummelberg. He's dealing with a cough right now, so he thought I could take a crack at this. First and foremost, we, of course, agree with the ultimate conclusion of the staff report that this rezone should be approved from I-3 to GB. As you can see from the map, this is currently surrounded on 3 sides by general business zoning, so the change in zoning would not be a departure from the current character of the neighborhood. Rather, it would bring this lot in accordance with that character. The I-3 zoning has been there since the 1965 plan, well before the Veterans Memorial Parkway retail corridor developed into what it is today. It's more of an artifact, the I-3 zoning is more of an artifact of that change rather than an accurate reflection of what this area is like today. Currently, there is a vacant lot on that property, and the Zanuck Corporation is in the process of a deal to sell this where it would be developed into an urgent care clinic. So this change in zoning would allow the change from nothing to something that would help benefit the area. And then just beyond that, some miscellaneous points. This is our Veterans Memorial Parkway area. This is already developed. There are no concerns with where this zoning would affect in terms of utilities. They're all already there. Emergency services are all already there. Those are really not issues present here. And beyond that, I would just like to repeat, we are in agreement with the staff report, which recommends approval, and I have nothing further to say. I'll let any member of the public who wants to come up to the podium do so now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Any questions from the board? You have a yellow ballot. Oh, that's later. I'd say, yeah.
(16-0) in favor.
Thank you.
I move to hear and vote on Z 2873 Whisker LLC I-3 to I-2.
Thank you. This is a request to rezone a approximately 7.5 acre property consisting of 4 lots, 4 subdivided lots at the northeast corner of Maple Point Drive and Concord Road. It's unimproved except for one building on the easternmost lot, and it was platted in 2013. The request is to rezone from I-3 to I-2. There are, as you know, 4 industrial districts. The larger the number, the more intense the district. So this is, in essence, a downzoning from I-3 to I-2. Not entirely sure what the petitioner's intent is. Usually we have rezonings go in the other direction. But at any rate, the comp plan does recommend industrial for this property, and staff certainly has no objection to it. We'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Does the petitioner or his or her representative wish to make a presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Hiddle. Ryan Munden with Reiling, Teeter, and Schreier here on behalf of the petitioner, Whisker LLC. Whisker owns lots 4, 3, and 2 in Weir's subdivision, along with the outlot on the northern side of these lots. The building that exists on lot 4 is to be leased. The plan for developing lots 2 and 3 would be to develop it similarly to lot 4. Likewise, Karma Enterprises owns lot 1 and the outlot to the south and west of that. And their plans are the same, to build a building to lease out. And the reason for the down zone to I-2 is it provides some additional flexibility in the tenants that are available for these properties. We believe this creates a nice transition from the GB to the heavier industrial use in I-3. We concur with staff's report and recommendation, and we request your recommendation of approval. Ron Whistler with Whisker LLC is with me tonight. We'd be happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? Any questions from the board?
I'd just like to add that from the City of Lafayette, we would like to thank them for sitting down and working this out with us before this was presented. Good job. Thank you.
Hearing none, you have your last yellow ballot.
Ballots cast, 16 yes votes.
Thank you. I have no administrative matters. I have no new subdivisions filed for the February Executive Committee agenda. Therefore, I will go to determination of variances.
I move the following request for variance from a unified zoning ordinance is not a request for use variance prohibited from consideration by ordinance and statute. That would be BZA 2093 JHS Investments Group LLC, care of Ripam Singh.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Director's report.
Thank you. The director's report was distributed earlier today. Don't have anything necessarily to call out, but would be glad to answer any questions you might have.
I had a quick question on that. So how are we reaching out to Wabash and Township trustee people and those to let them know about the public meetings?
They are through a variety of homeowners association groups. There are Facebook groups and other communication, social media communication lines. I know the town of Battleground, I don't know if it was the entire Tippecanoe Township or not, but they've agreed to send out notification with their utility bills, which is a huge thing. There's actually more, but I don't recall. I can find out for you.
I was just curious, because I see two of the I was just curious with it coming up, like how we're relaying this to those groups, the ones in Wabash. Tippecanoe Townships, it wasn't until February.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Any citizens' comments or grievances? Grievances? Hearing none.
I move to adjourn.
We're adjourned. I did that one on purpose.
No longer being recorded.
I know. She was ready for that one.